Here is one movement tip, technique, or mechanic for every single hero in Marvel Rivals. Now some of these you might know, for others maybe you don't know or just need a refresher. Now before you skip ahead, if you could just hear me out for a second. If your subscribe button is highlighted, that means you're not subscribed. If you could just do me a favor of clicking it. It's free, and in exchange you get some pretty awesome content practically every day. Whether that be Marvel Rivals guides, news, heroes, whatever. If you want to support my content even further, maybe think about becoming a YouTube member. But without further ado, let's get started. We're gonna first begin with our tank category. And our first hero is gonna be none other than Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange actually has a ton of movement tech with his portals. Whether that be sending enemies off, getting teammates from A to B, or perhaps even using it to your advantage to get a pretty sneaky ultimate off. But here's one movement tip, technique, or mechanic that you should try out. Now, to perform this movement technique or mechanic for Doctor Strange, it's actually rather easy. All we have to do is fly up to as high as we can. So fly up, going up as high as we can, bringing out our portal, repositioning it so it's directly under Doctor Strange. Then we're placing the second one somewhere relatively high so we can get full motion, and basically we're using our falling momentum to fall directly to the portal, and it carries that momentum of falling so we can speed through our portal. This allows us to get some pretty easy, unsuspecting ultimates or even kills on enemies. So like I said, we can pair it up with our ultimate to make it pretty unsuspecting. So what we're going to do, fly up, go all the way up, position our portal, reposition, place it directly under us. Then we're moving our portal to some enemies, placing it here. And as I'm falling, I'm popping my ulti now, and you reach the enemies quite easily. That's how you can get a fairly easy ultimate off and have a pretty cool mechanic that allows you to get to enemies rather fast. Now when it comes to Bruce Banner or Hulk, he has a rather interesting movement mechanic. Now besides that, there's something I want to mention. I recommend you going into your settings, going to your keyboard, going to your combat, making sure you have Bruce Banner selected, and come down to here. You see hold to activate Incredible Leap, turn this off. Trust me, it's just a lot better. Now to perform this movement technique, all we have to do is be in our ultimate Hulk form, get to Hulk, have our charge fully charged up, and then spamming our jump button. You can kind of see a B hopping away. Let me try to get this better. As you can see, I'm B hopping away. Now let me show you one more time. Go into ultimate Hulk form, fully charge up our, charge jump, and then spamming our space or our jump button as fast as you can, and you can perform to B-hop. This allows you to move rather quickly as Hulk. But there is something to be aware of when you're doing this. You have to have this setting on. You have to be Bruce Banner, and you have to have hold to activate Incredible Leap on. Now, in most cases, I recommend players that are playing Hulk to turn this off because this makes your life a whole lot easier. But if you want to be really fast as Hulk, turn it back on and you can B-hop. So in a way, if you really wanted to, if you're fighting and you have your ultimate and you're mid-ult, you could literally just turn it on if you want to, but I highly encourage you not to do that because you'll waste precious time, but that's just completely up to you. Now when it comes to a character like Magneto, Magneto is rather difficult to perform any of these movement techniques. He's rather slow. He's very slow actually. He can't perform B-hops like other characters, he can't teleport like Doctor Strange, and just all around, again, he's a rather slow hero. With his ultimate ability, it allows him to fly up or fly down in any direction. As you can see, I ulti, I fly up by holding our space or our jump button, and then going down by holding our control button. So you could use this to either get to a high ground to help your team if they're on a high ground and you're below them, or you can simply use it to, get down quicker, maybe get a unsuspecting ultimate. You could also say this is an enemy right here. I want to get a surprise ultimate. I ulti, I fly around something, and then I fly back, and then I ult, right? Again, that's all you can really do with this character. Just not a whole lot. I wish you could B-hop, but this character just doesn't allow you. I've tried everything. I've tried Squirrel Girl. I've tried spamming space. I've tried going to my settings. I've literally done everything I can to really try to get the maximum potential of this character, but all I found is his ultimate. Now in a way, Thor is kind of like Magneto. He doesn't have too much movement. And what I mean by that is things like bee hopping or something that gives him some extra speed. Of course, you gain a little bit more speed when you use your Awakening Rune to throw your lightning. Of course, you move a little bit faster. And yes, he does have his Storm Surge ability, which allows him to, go further distances in charge. The only thing I know is that if you hold your Storm Surge, you can't really cancel it. You have to fully let it run out, and you've kind of wasted the ability. If you don't want to wait the full duration of, letting it go, you can simply look at the ground. It'll use your Storm Surge, but you're not committing to a fight. Now, you don't have to, use this as an escape or an engage. You can simply use it in the middle of a fight. Say you're fighting someone, you can use the Storm Surge, and just like that, you're still fighting, doing a lot of damage. But again, all I know is that you can look straight down, and it cancels the Storm Surge. But of course, if you have some Thor movement techniques or tips, let me know in the comments down below what you found. For me personally, I haven't found anything, anything really worth sharing that I seem interesting. The only thing I know is, of course, looking down to cancel the Storm Surge. Now, when it comes to Groot, there's only really one thing I can tell you, and that is placing his wall at an angle. As you can see, when I'm walking on the ground normally, I am rather slow because I am a tank. But if you angle the wall, you actually get a little bit of a speed up compared to walking on the ground. So at the start of a match and you're running out your spawn doors with your team, I recommend throwing one of these down. It allows your team to speed up just a tad bit more to get to the fight quicker. Unless all of a sudden you place one of these in your spawn door, then it's kind of like everyone's just staring at you. Now when it comes to Peni Parker, we know she can, grapple to something and you're attached, and you can press F to detach from it. Now this is something I recommend you to do if you're on a point, contesting the point and you're really not trying to die and just be a nuisance to the enemy team. You can attach the web, and as you can see, I'm attached still. Now you could be fighting. The second you start getting shot, instantly allow yourself to go back. To do that, on the keyboard, I'm holding D, going to the right. The second I let go of D, I get swung back to this. So you can use this as a way to propel yourself. I mean, overall, it's not terrible, but it's just like something you can do to be rather annoying to the enemies. Is this allow yourself to kind of bounce around. That's probably the best way to use the web string, in my opinion. Be on the point, contesting, be a nuisance, throwing mines everywhere, doing whatever you can to be annoying. With Captain America, it's rather straightforward that he has this sprint ability, but if you pair it with a jump, you can bee hop and move even faster. And it's a lot easier to get around the map while you're being able to do this bee hopping. It's essentially the second you touch the ground, you're instantly, tapping space or tapping your jump button to get back up into the air, while at the same time you're always running. Easiest way to do this is by going into your settings. Going to keyboard, going to combat, going to Captain America, and where it says hold to dash, have this off. If you have it on, you have to hold down your shift or hold down your sprint button to continuously, run. And you might forget, one time and all of a sudden you're slowed down because of the momentum and the change in speed. But you go back, go to keyboard and combat, take off hold to dash, and all I have to do is tap my, run button once and I'm always running. Then from there, all I have to do is tap space. The second you're about to land the ground, tap space again. Or tap your jump button again. This allows you to just be a fearsome foe on the battlefield, giving you a ton of extra movement you didn't even know you needed. Now diving straight into Venom, if this is your first time playing Venom, or if you've been playing him for a while, the first thing you want to do, no matter what, go to settings, go to keyboard and combat, make sure we have Venom selected. From there, we're coming down to easy swing. We're turning this off, because when enabled, the ability will automatically select available grappling points to initiate the swing. Basically, this is telling you that when it's on, it will choose where the web goes. You don't have a choice or a say in the matter. Unlike Spider-Man, he's not as fluid, so there's not a whole lot to say. The only biggest tip I can give you is turning off easy swing. Of course, if you know other movement tips for this character, let me know in the comments below. But again, this is really all I have to say. Again, he has the wall run, pretty cool. You jump off, then go for a swing from there. Again, not a whole lot. He can't really bee hop as there's a slight delay. so it makes it rather difficult to perform a B-hop. Now diving straight into Black Panther, while he does have a ton of movement, he doesn't have like things like B-hopping or anything like that, but it's just primarily his entire kit. His entire kit is based around movement, so it's rather straightforward. If you didn't already know, Spirit Rend is his dash or, tactical ability, and to make sure you have it on, always up, you have to have an enemy with a Vibranium stack. The second he has a Vibranium stack, that means you can actually dash through the enemy. And when you dash through an enemy with Vibranium stack, you get your shift or tactical ability back. So the best way to really capitalize and always have a dash up is to, throw your spear, because it gives a Vibranium stack, dash through the opponent, and then always try to land another spear. This allows you to get another reset, and then hopefully you have enough momentum and time to get another spear back up, so you can keep recycling the dash. Now, when it comes to Black Widow, in a way she kind of works like Captain America, and she kind of works like Hulk. And what I mean by that is you have to go to settings, go to keyboard and combat, and to be able to do this, you have to have hold the dash on. So you're using your sprint button, jumping, second you land, you have to jump again. There's a little bit of a buffer, so you can't perform a perfect B-hop, one that would continuously carry your momentum, but you can kind of perform a B-hop. Even though you're not super fast, it still acts like a B-hop. Of course, it's nothing like Hulk or Captain America, but it is there, it is something you can do. Now, Hawkeye's an interesting one. He only has really one movement ability, and that is a skyward leap where he can perform a double jump in the direction of movement. So if I'm running forward, you have to jump once to be able to activate the double jump. So again, I'm running forward, I jump, I double jump, I perform kind of a leap. Now the thing is, if I go into practice settings and I take off no ability cooldown, and I land, the second I land there's this 6-second cooldown, so this character doesn't really have that much movement, in all honesty. I mean, you can allow the double jump to put you into some areas, where enemies don't expect you to be. For instance, you could, possibly get up to higher positions, but it's not the best. You can't wall run, you can't jump. This character really lacks in movement in anything, in any regard. Now, just like Hawkeye, Hela doesn't have that much movement. They're kind of in the same boat. She does have her astral flock, where she turns into a crow, and she can fly in one direction. Now, she also has the ability to glide, so that is something to be noteworthy of. First and foremost, I always jump before I use the crow form to get just a little bit more height. So if I jump, and then I fly up, and then I hold, my jump button, I can slowly fall down. This allows me to target enemies rather easily. If I'm here at the 30-meter mark, right on the line, and I just crow form, I get to above a little bit, maybe like 16 meters. But the second I jump forward, and then I crow form, I go just a little bit further than just normally crow forming. So I always recommend to incorporate a jump in the direction of your wanting to crow form. Now again, what I like to do usually is go about like a 60-degree angle or so, jump forward, and then crow to that area. Hold my jump button so I can slowly fall down and get some easy hits. Most of the time I see Iron Fist players running on the ground. Now let me tell you something, don't do this. You have a wall running mechanic that allows you to be on the wall to get to other positions, get jumps on enemies a lot easier. Is when you're wall running, you can actually reset your jump. So I jump off the wall and I hop back on and it'll reset it. It kind of like carries the momentum in a way. Each time I jump off the wall and I jump on, you can see it kind of resets it if it doesn't like bug out, but most of the time it should reset your jump, but for whatever reason, sometimes it will bug out. Again, I'm not really sure why it bugs out, but it's just how it is. Now this is something I see a lot of Iron Fist players really underutilize. Say this is a convoy map. This is the enemy spawn, and the match is about to begin, and you're defending. Well, get above the spawn door. Put yourself in a corner that allows you to hold your wall run and kind of keep you in one direction, one spot, until your target comes out. The whole point of Iron Fist is to create a 1v1 situation because he excels in 1v1s, much like Magik. Now when it comes to Magik, she has a lot of movement. She has, her whirlwind attack or her portal that she can either whirlwind or summon a demon. She has her dash ability that allows her, to propel yourself. Again, I recommend always jumping before to gain a little bit more momentum, go a little bit further. Of course, if I land myself here again at the 30 meters and I E, I get to 15 meters, but I go to 30 meters again. I jump forward a bit and then I E, I'm just a little bit further. It helps just a little bit. Now there is, one thing I want to give you is, now what we're going to be wanting to do is use our whirlwind ability. So we're going to be dashing in a direction, using our whirlwind, then E-ing and then animation canceling our primary attack. Again, using our whirlwind ability, the second it connects, then we're hitting our uppercut. Now I am a terrible Magik player. I don't know why. My brain never lets me, actually perform these combos to a T. But it's essentially like that. Now when it comes to Moon Knight, there's a whole bunch of movement tech that I've already shown in previous videos, but I'll just give you a reminder to what he can do. So first and foremost, I recommend going into your settings, going to keyboard and combat, making sure you have Moon Knight selected. From there, come down and hold the glide. I recommend turning this off. It's just better for me, at least. Some people might like it hold to be on, but toggle just allows you to, come in and out of it rather fast. You can kind of keep that momentum a little bit. All you have to do, look directly at the ground. From there, press your hook button, and you get launched up straight up. I'm not 100% sure why it does it, but it does. Now this is something I highly encourage you to do, especially if an enemy is jumping on you. But besides that, you can also incorporate a couple other things. What I like to do is I hook the ground. From there, I double jump, then I glide. But instead of, holding my glide, I will actually spam the glide button. It just allows you to, be a little more agile in the air. Now diving deep into the ocean with Namor. Sorry if I mispronounced his name, I suck at pronunciations. But he doesn't have a ton of movement, he only has 2 movement abilities. One being the Blessing of the Deep, which puts him in a protective shield that you can move around in. And he also has the ability to glide a little bit. Now, most of the time, I recommend you to save your Blessing of the Deep when enemies are jumping on you, or you feel like you're in some type of problematic spot. You can kind of move while you're in the Blessing of the Deep. If you're in it, you can kind of, WASD, move around. If you press your space or jump button, you can move up. So that's something to keep in mind. And you can do left control to go down. So in a way, similar to Magneto's ultimate ability, you cannot kind of allow yourself with the Blessing of the Deep to get yourself to elevated spots. For example, if I go up here, I can keep going up, and now I'm in a spot maybe enemies won't hit me from. From there, I can place my turrets. Now, I always recommend, it's kind of like Hela as well in a way. If you're in the air, glide down and start throwing, your spears. It's just something I recommend you do. Although sometimes it could be rather easy to hit you as a target because you're slowly falling down. If you allow yourself to, move around a bit, it might be a little bit harder to hit you. And that's really all there is to Namor. If you have any other information or useful tips, do let me know in the comments down below. I'm always open to your suggestions, and I love reading them. Now with Psylocke, like many other characters, she doesn't have a ton of movement. The only thing that moves is, something else. But that's besides the point. The only real movement things you kind of have to deal with is her dash, and her invisibility. Her invisibility lasts about 3 seconds, 4 to 3 seconds. Most of the time, you're using this as an escape or some type of engage. Now, me personally, this is what I like to do. If I have my ultimate ability up, I always recommend dashing into the air and then popping your ult. It's kind of like Genji's ultimate from Overwatch, if you're familiar with that game. But you dash up, and then you press your ult. This makes it so at the beginning of your ulti, it's a little bit harder to hit because there's a split second to where you use your ultimate that you're vulnerable right there. Again, once you're pulling out the sword for the first time, you're a little bit vulnerable to damage. Now, although you might miss, a little bit of damage from your ultimate, I'd much rather survive and use my ultimate than dying while trying to use it. Now, I do have a guide on Psylocke that gives you all the combos and everything you need to know, but here's a refresher. Left click, right click, dash through. Now, Punisher does have a little bit of movement, nothing crazy like, Black Panther or anything like that, but his alternative fire, you fire smoke screens and it launches you away. so you consider that as some type of movement. He also has a zipline that you place down, and at the end of the zipline, you jump. This allows you to propel yourself a little bit more. As you can see, I carry the momentum, but for whatever reason, if I go backwards on the rope, I go faster. I don't know why this is a thing, but it's something to be mindful of, is you actually go a lot faster when you're going backwards on the thing than forwards. You can see I still gain some speed when I go forwards, but the second I go backwards, I go even faster and farther. It's not necessarily something you need to know, but it's something to be aware of that you could use to your advantage. And when it comes to Scarlet Witch, she doesn't have a ton of movement. She has some, but she's not really good in higher ranks. Maybe in lower, she's a problem to deal with, but at higher ranks, this character is terrible. But for example, she has 2 tactical abilities, or 2 mystic projections, where she enters the phase state for free flight. And you can press again to exit early. Most of the time you're using this for survivability. But I always recommend trying to move around as best as you can to try to make it harder to hit or harder to track for enemies, because when you're in this form, enemies can see a small little dot so they can track and figure out where you're going most of the time. So most of the time you're always going to want to place yourself behind some type of wall. You start casting it behind some type of wall and then go down once it's about to pop. That's really all the movement tech there really is to this character. This character is rather stationary and there isn't a ton to do with her, besides, moving around in her one ability. Now we come to Spider-Man, probably one of the fastest characters in the entire game, and one hero that I completely suck with. But here's some movement tech that maybe is helpful to you if you're playing Spider-Man. So first and foremost, he can B-hop, he can also carry momentum while he swings, he can jump. There. But you only want to jump once, you don't want to double jump. So again, jump once, and then it carries the momentum, and you can uppercut to carry the momentum even further. If you web swing, apex, jump, and then right when you're about to land, you could also uppercut to keep the momentum going. Now when it comes to Squirrel Girl, there isn't a whole bunch of movement mechanics or tips, like really hard ones. She doesn't really have B-hops or anything like that. Acorns, and can use an ability without cooldown once in a short duration. So for example, if you jump, you're in the air, and you're falling down, you could press your acorn ability again. So let me show you this again. But basically you could, allow yourself to jump, and then when you're slowly falling down, jump again. So I initially tail bounce, I pop this as fast as I can, and then I can kind of double bounce in a way, and it allows you to get to higher positions than maybe you didn't think you could. Of course, this is what I've found. It's nothing special, but it's definitely something to be aware of, if you're having trouble of, getting jumped all the time on Squirrel Girl, or you just want some, new movement to learn. Now when it comes to Starlord, there's a couple of movement tips that I recommend. Now it's nothing out of the ordinary like B-hopping, but it is something that's quite useful when you're using your flight or your shift ability. One thing I recommend you to do is once you're in shift, spam space and wiggle around as best as you can. The more agile you are, the better odds you have at living. While you're in ultimate, if you run out of ammo, instead of having that reload animation, simply side dash or dash forward, dash backwards, whatever, it instantly reloads your guns. The barrage or the dodge, you can actually fly, and jump, and go higher and lower. Something a lot of people don't know, and of course, rather self-explanatory. If you don't want to reload, you're running out of ammo, this alternate fire instantly reloads. It's a little bit of movement, I guess, but something that can definitely be useful. Because Iron Man is permanently firing, sometimes he can be a rather easy target to hit, so you want to do a lot of strafing. Instead of doing AD or left to right strafing, try to do a circular strafing motion, and this also applies to every single character in the game. Never AD strafe in this specific game, because if you AD strafe, you actually slow down. Whereas if you do a circular strafe, you're actually a lot faster than side-to-side strafing. Your hyper velocity, wiggle your mouse around, AD, WASD spam, movement spam. You're trying to make yourself as hard to hit as possible. There's a lot of instances where it's relatively easy to get rid of an Iron Man. Now when it comes to Storm, besides being my favorite character in this entire game, and I think she's highly underrated and undervalued, but that's just me, is that her E ability, as you can see at the bottom right, or one of her abilities, is the Goddess Boost. If you're in your one form, you're faster. If you're in the lightning form, you do more damage, and your enemies will also, or your friendlies will also do more damage. Most of the time, you always want to position yourself against the wall to try to utilize, the cover as best as you can, because this character is rather easy to take out. While you're doing all this movement, you always want to jiggle peek in a way, because you can kind of throw, as it is a projectile, you throw it, then get back into cover. It allows you to, again, stay more agile while still outputting damage. You can also incorporate your E ability. And I always recommend going up and down and then doing the circular strafe or the WASD like I talked about, or moving your joystick around in a circular motion makes you a lot harder to hit than going left to right. So if I went left to right and then I went up and down, you can see it's not the best. But if I went circular motion while going down and up, it makes myself a little harder to hit. The whole thing with Storm is that you want to be unpredictable. There's a lot of instances where there's a relatively easy pattern to figure out on Storm players that ultimately result in their deaths. So the best thing I can recommend for you is if you don't know what you're doing, then the enemy probably has no idea what you're doing. So moving around as sporadic as you can allows for the enemies to be, rather, mesmerized by Storm's presence in a way. But again, the whole point of Storm, don't stand still or, go in a straight line. Move around as best as you can. Now, when it comes to Winter Soldier or Bucky in Marvel Rivals, there isn't, a ton of movement. I mean, there is some, you can, Trooper Fists, Trooper Fists, up to ledges, up to angles that maybe you didn't think were possible. But one of the biggest movement tips I also think is one of his, best qualities as a character. You hook an enemy towards you, and then with that, you kind of want to do a sidestep to the left or to the right, and then use your Trooper's Fist to push that enemy into your team. This allows you to get a pretty easy pick, and it does give you, there is some movement tech, because you have to be able to sidestep, mid-animation, or right when they're coming to you, you have to kind of sidestep, and, spin your camera around to push the enemy into. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, this character is rather interesting. He was underrated for the longest time until players actually showed that you can play Wolverine effectively. And the biggest way to play Wolverine is by kidnapping tanks. But some movement tips you didn't maybe know is that your Pharaoh Leap can actually be, interrupted with your Viscous Rampage or your alternative attack. So if you did a Pharaoh Leap, this is the entire duration and how far it goes. But if you do the Pharaoh Leap again, and then put, your alternative attack, it will actually cancel the Pharaoh Leap. So if you were to, in a way, grab an enemy, and then use it, it will cancel the Pharaoh Leap, but you still do the damage of the Pharaoh Leap and your alternative attack. So it can be useful to get a little bit burst of damage if you really wanted to. Now, when it comes to Adam Warlock, there's not a lot of movement you can really do with this character. He's pretty stationary for the most part. I mean, the only movement he gets is when he dies and he activates his passive where you get Cocoon. So the best advice I can give you, you can still, WASD strafe, spacebar or your jump button to go up, control to go down. Again, the best advice I can give you, try to position yourself in a relatively safe place. There's really nothing else that you can talk about, Now, when it comes to Cloak and Dagger, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see when you're playing this character. That is when you're in Cloak's form, and your alternative attack is Dark Teleportation, enshroud nearby allies in the Dark Force dimension and grant them phased, making them untargetable and invisible to enemies and granting them a movement boost. This is extremely useful. Most of the time, Cloak and Dagger players are on the ground and using this ability. But you can actually fly with this ability, allowing you to get into some really advantageous spots. For example, if I'm doing damage to an enemy, like so, I start receiving a ton of damage back and I want to get out of the fight, you want to position yourself somewhere that's hard to hit. A lot of people underestimate that this ability is amazing. Trust me, this ability is amazing. But a lot of people don't know how to use it properly. Now, when it comes to Mantis, there isn't a whole lot you can do, but you can sort of be hop if timed correctly. As we all know, Mantis does have a speed boost, like a self-speed boost that makes her a little bit quicker than most characters in the game. But if you incorporate a jump and if it's timed correctly, you can go just a little bit faster. It's not a whole lot, but it is some speed. Although most of the time you're just going to be, walking around, but there is some speed difference. It's not a lot. I mean, it's probably like the smallest amount of speed increase I've ever seen in the game, but it is something to be aware of. Now, when it comes to Jeff the Land Shark, there is a couple things to be aware of. Firstly, I recommend you going to your settings, making sure you have Jeff the Land Shark selected. So Jeff. Come down to keyboard and combat. Scroll down, you see hold to dive. I recommend having hold to dive on. I think it's very helpful to, get in and out of your dive rather quickly. Hold to crawl. This is something I recommend turning off, because if you have both of these on, you have to hold 2 buttons at the same time, and it can be, rather difficult to, remember to have both of these buttons, pressed and held down at the same exact time. Because when you have hold to dive on, it allows you to be rather, quick, surfacing and desurfacing. And if you, have, hold to crawl off, all you have to do is run up to a wall and tap space or tap your jump button 1 time. It's so much easier to do it that way. It allows for a lot more movement. Now, when it comes to Loki, there isn't, a ton of movement mechanic, but let me just give you some tips. First and foremost, I recommend you putting 1 Loki clone down at a time. Now, you might be asking why. Well, it allows you to have better setup, because when you perform your alternative attack, which is, so if I were to create an illusion, it spawns, 2, and of course, you can only have 2 at one time on the field. So it's always better just to place 1, because if one of them dies, you will always have a backup to swap in and out combat with. And it's just something, I encourage you to do it that way, as it's just easier. Now, when it comes to Luna Snow, there isn't a whole lot of movement. I mean, she does have the speed up, but the second you jump, you lose that, speed. I mean, I guess you get a little bit of that momentum. Can't really B-hop, but I do recommend going to settings, go to combat, and if you were to come down to ultimate ability, and you were to put it to mouse up, and if I came to my ultimate and I press Q, then I mouse up, I swap between the 2. Although there is a lot faster ways to, swap between the 2. It is something you can do and does help your team. Again, there's not a ton of movement that you can really do with her, but this is something that can help you. Now, when it comes to our last hero on the list, that is Rocket Raccoon. By far, one of my favorite healers in the entire game besides Invisible Woman. First things first, go to settings, go to keyboard and combat, go to Rocket Raccoon, scroll down, and you see this direction of wall crawling. I recommend turning this to advanced towards crosshair, especially if you're on mouse and keyboard. This makes you a whole lot more agile on the wall. It allows you to be a lot more sporadic, harder to hit, things like that. Now, there is one movement mechanic, tip, or technique that I recommend you learn for Rocket Raccoon if you're playing him a lot. And that is, if you run up to a wall, you tap your jump button, whatever it is, and then tap your shift button or your tactical button. But, if you're on, controller, your jetpack dash, which is this. So you're running up to a wall, tap space, and then shift. This propels you up forward, gaining you a little more height, like a super jump, and then you can hold your jump button to slowly glide down. Again, just like Hela. Now, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form, and let me know in the comments down below if I missed one of your movement mechanics that you would like to share. Go for it. I love to read what you all have to share. Subscribe if you're new, like the video if you liked it, and I hope you have a great day.